Welcome to the Vertical Stride, the podcast where we break down the best practices of the first year runner all the way to the professional athlete. I'm your host, Jack Wren, and I believe that while paces, goals, and races differ, the principles that govern quality training are the same for everyone. It's the first episode. I want to give us something that we can really sink our teeth in, something that you all can apply very easily yourselves, and something that you can walk away today and make an adjustment today in your training. And so I have a special treat for you all. I have a good friend of mine. I'm joined by Nate Rath, who is a former collegiate runner at Syracuse University. He is a competitive adult runner. He coaches at the high school level for cross country and track. He coaches adults, whether they are beginning or trying to seek Boston qualifiers, trying to run under 2.5 hours for the marathon. Coaches a wide variety of abilities and paces, lots of knowledge. And so I'm really excited to have Nate on with us today. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Honored to be here.
So tell us a little bit about like your own running right now. What are you focused on? What are you working on?
In general, I'm just focused on, building miles and a good base to whatever I might plan to do in the fall. And honestly, I don't race a lot,
Hmm.
right now. A lot of my attention is coaching and getting other athletes where they want to be. But in the process, I am training consistently and pretty relatively hard to whatever might come my way in a race. But in general, I would say anything 5K to half marathon is kind of what I'm training for. But
Gotcha.
nothing specific, on the near horizon.
Okay. So kind of a all around mix of things, working with a whole bunch of different levels. What's maybe like of the people that you're currently working with right
Mm.
now, kind of the like, all right, the introductory level to what is maybe like the highest level that you're working with right now?
Yeah, I have anywhere. I have people that are honestly just starting to run and they want to put together 20 minutes for 2 miles, all the way to, like you said, marathoners who want to get under 240, under 230, even 5K runners, in the 15s and things like that. But, I would say the fastest people are probably mostly younger, or, we have some at, the high school
Hmm.
level that we are coaching that can really, move pretty quick when it comes to the shorter races, the 800, the 1 mile, the 2 mile. But privately, a lot of people I coach are doing 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathons. And some are just getting into it, and others have been doing it for a while. And I have some athletes I've been coaching for 10 years. And just to see where they were and where they're at now
Hmm.
is is pretty cool. It's rewarding and it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was excited to have you on for this topic in this episode, is because you work with such a wide variety. You see all the different, race distances, you see all the different race paces, you see, the wide variety of athletes. And really what I want to focus on is what are the common elements for those introductory runners, right? The people that are just starting out to those elite level runners that, hey, even 10, 15, 20 years into the sport, they're still doing these same principles of training. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I've identified kind of the three easiest ways to just get better, to get faster, to get fitter. And so hopefully, for you new runners, right, you pick up something that you can add in today. And maybe some of you more experienced runners, we can remind you of something that, hey, maybe you're neglecting from time to time, because it is easy to leave some of these things out. We talked about having a wide level, a wide, breadth of experience and abilities. Let's start with kind of our introductory runners. So you coach privately, someone reaches out to you and they want to get started with a plan, and you set them up. You've gotten your background information, you kind of have their experience level, what they're trying to do, what their goals are, and you're building a plan for them. In building up to their goal, what are kind of the first steps, the first things that have to happen for them to start seeing progress?
Yeah. Well, first, like you said, I always have to ask their running background, how long they've been running, how many miles, how many days a week, all their running experience, because that really plays the most important factor of where I take them, where I start them now to where they want to go. So if they haven't run a day in their life, then I have to start with that. And we're literally running once or twice a week, making sure their body gets used to running,
Hmm.
because it's a very impact sport where when you're pounding the ground, 1 foot after another, mile after after mile, it's a lot on the body, so they have to get used to that. So, in general, yeah, I ask how much running they've done, days per week and things like that, and then from there, it's just building a nice, steady base work, groundwork to where they wanna head.
Yeah.
So, if
So
they're doing a race if they wanna do a race in a year
mhm,
and they've been running 2 or 3 days a week, well, that's where I start them 2 or 3 days a week, and then we gradually move to 4, perhaps, for example, and then we slowly, slowly add miles and intensity. So if they've never done a hard workout in their life, I'm not
mhm.
gonna start them with a hard workout. They're just doing easy base running, zone 2 conversational, very comfortable pace.
Yeah. So you've touched on one of my 3 points here, and I'm labeling it as consistency over intensity.
Okay.
Right. So you
Yeah.
talked about, let's say that runner is 2 to 3 days a week right now, trying to build. You know, is your first step, hey, how do we turn those 2 to 3 days into 4 to 5 days in a week? Is that, like how do we build to that point? Is that one of the
Yes.
first targets for you?
How to build to that, yes. And that can be slower than what they want,
Yeah.
but that's okay. And that's one of the main things, like as a coach, that a lot of people when they first get into it, they're excited and they want to go from 0 to 100 very quick. And I have to really put on the brakes and be like, we have to progressively build up to this. So yes, and
Yeah.
that'll take a few months. I mean, that'll take however long. And that's the feedback between athlete and coaches. How's everything feeling?
Mhm.
Are you feeling good? Are you getting aches and pains? If you get aches and pains, then we have to stay here for a little bit, 2 or 3 days a week before we jump up to 4. Because the most important part is staying healthy, but building that consistent base work too.
Yeah. So what are some of the benefits of building that? You're calling it that base work
Mhm.
or that consistency. What are the benefits for the athlete when they do that?
I mean, you're building aerobic capacity. You're building, your body goes through a lot of changes during that time. It adapts. It's learning to adapt, just not like your heart and lungs and, oxygen, the way it moves through your body, but also impact on your body too. Your tissues, your bones, your joints, everything is learning and adapting to this new thing.
Yeah.
And it needs time to adapt. It can't adapt too suddenly. Otherwise, it could just wreak havoc later. So, yeah, a lot of aerobic capacity, your heart and lungs, and, all your muscles are just slowly over time getting better, more efficient at
Mhm.
what they do. And, you know, so it's a slower process for a lot of people would like, but
Yeah.
it's
So
very important.
you talk about these body adaptations, and I'll kind of put some numbers out there for the people listening. So the consistency over the intensity, that's when we start to see the increase in our mitochondrial content in
Mhm.
our cells, right? So our cells are becoming more powerful, our cells are becoming more efficient, producing more energy. That's when, and this is one of the big buzzwords in running, right? VO2 max is improving with that consistency. You kind of talked about this idea of, very intense one session versus kind of an extended period stress on the body from the
Mhm.
consistency, right? Kind of that chronic workload versus the acute workload,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
What are some of the dangers for an athlete that just goes out and just does, too hard, too intense of a session without kind of that base, as you're calling it, to support them and protect them?
You need that base to support. So, I mean, the one thing is definitely injury. So if you go out there and you run really hard and you have no framework or no base work of this consistent, good, easy running, then your body's just not used to it yet.
Hmm.
So it can literally stress fracture, break down, you know, anything, plantar fasciitis, knee problems. But it's just too much too fast for the body to adapt, and it can wreak havoc, and it's just not physical. A lot of times it's mental, even emotional. It's just go out too hard too fast, and then all of a sudden you're just, hitting a wall and you're just struggling,
Yeah.
in a lot of different areas. So, yeah, it's
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
not it's not a good place to be.
you talk about like mentally and physically, right? So it can be hard. You go try and do this hard workout and that doesn't go the way that you want, or man, I'm really sore, really tired for 2, 3 days and I can't run. So then I'm maybe missing some of my other runs,
Yep, that
right? Just kind of a lot of effects that, physically we're not responding to it, and then mentally we're having a hard time from it as well. So kind of we talked about that introductory runner, right? That beginner runner that, okay, we need to move from 2 to 3 days a week to 4 to 5 days a week. Now all of a sudden we're running on back to back days,
Right.
right? Or, that maybe that high school runner that, hey, I run the 5 days at school, right, for practice, but I need to add that sixth day, right? Or even if we take another step up, instead of athletes that are focused on like a 7 day cycle of a week, they're focused on like a 10-day cycle or a 14-day cycle, or sometimes even a 21-day cycle. What does that consistency over intensity look like for those athletes?
Yeah. So that consistency, I mean, they just have to put in, you know, more volume because like you hinted at it before, the mitochondria process. Also, the consistency and the volume and the easy running increases stroke volume. It increases the blood capillaries, the way that the
Hmm.
efficiency of the oxygen moving through your body. So we all have these little capillaries on the end of our arteries, and the more easy running that you do, the more these capillaries are spreading out and going to other parts of your body where it can deliver oxygen more efficient later.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that and building your body up to be an efficient powerhouse, an efficient endurance powerhouse, then when you add the intensity, it's ready for it because it can deliver the oxygen better. So the consistency piece there is going to help you, move to that fifth to sixth day or the 13th, the 12th to 13th day on a 14-day
Yeah.
cycle or whatever. But it just creates that, foundational piece that is essential to kind of move to the next level. That's the way that, really needs to be.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like the advice you would give your beginner runner, and then your high school athlete, or your athlete that's moved on to college, or your competitive adult, is patience,
Patient, yeah. Gotta
right?
be patient. Yes. Also, another thing, so a lot of times people come to me with big goals,
Yeah.
and I love it. I really do like big goals. I'm very optimistic, and we've talked about, before, sometimes I might be too optimistic. However, I'm a very realistic person when it comes to how long that's gonna take. Because a lot of times people will come to me, they're like, and this has been a big one recently, "I wanna run a sub 3-hour marathon," or, "I wanna run" whatever it might be. And I tell them, "You can do that."
Hmm.
And a common thing is, "I'm gonna do it in 6 months. I'm gonna do it in a year."
Right.
And I'm like, I definitely believe you could do that. However, it's gonna take longer than what you think.
Yeah.
So, that's the realistic piece to it. But I tell them, "Be patient." So, for example, if I'm putting together workouts and they want to get a sub 3-hour marathon, that's what, 6:50, 6:53 pace. So, they'll wanna do training at that pace of what
Hmm.
they want for their goal. I'm like, "Well, you're not there at that marathon pace right now. So
Yeah.
we have to start you at, if I think they're at a 3:15 marathon, I'm going to put them at 7:10, 7:15, 7:20 pace for workouts, not what they want. I know
Right.
they want 6:50. It will come, but
Hmm.
you have to train at the pace that you're at now effectively,
Right.
and you will slowly get down to the pace that you want.
Yeah.
So that patience is huge, and people
Yeah.
have to learn to be patient with themselves. And honestly, so sometimes people will look at like other athletes, will look at a friend, they're like, "Well, they did it in a year and a half. They did this."
Yeah.
They did. And maybe it'll happen for you. And I usually know just for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, just getting to know somebody. I usually can tell how long it will take.
Right.
It might take longer, it might take a little shorter, but
Hmm.
I have a pretty good idea just from coaching over the years and working with a lot of
Yeah.
athletes about how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
And they learn to trust me and they know like, okay, if that's what you think, like
Right.
let's work from there.
So you're saying, even in, if we're going to classify this as consistency over intensity,
Mhm.
right? Even when we've become consistent, we're running our 5 out of the 7 days, or we've upped it to 4 days, or, the higher level athletes that are running 13 out of 14 days or 20 out of 21.
Right.
Even when you get into the intensity, even within intensity, that consistency is still coming first.
Oh yeah.
Of, you need to be consistent with what you're able to do. You need to be putting it in on a routine basis, not just having kind of these spike workouts where we just try and leave everything out there.
Right. 'Cause- yeah. And I have, you have two kinds of athletes. One that likes to put it out there all the time,
Yeah.
every every session, and others that don't like to hit, that, I won't even say max effort, but just, a more closer to max effort. And it's pushing both of those athletes. One might be, okay, push a little bit beyond what you're used to pushing. And another athlete's like, you need to back off and not go to the brink,
Yeah.
all the time. Leave that for the races. The training is going to get you there, but you can't. And that's for, just for preventing injury. That's preventing overtraining. That's preventing just really complete exhaustion all the
Yeah.
time. You want to feel fresh. You want to feel good. When it comes to time for a workout, good and ready to go. Like, I'm going
Mhm.
to kick butt this workout. I'm going
Yeah.
to, have a good session. You don't want to get to the line. I'm sore. I feel exhausted. I'm not really excited for the workout. You want to really be at a place where you're enjoying the process. And if you're training right, that will happen.
Right.
You'll be there emotionally, mentally, physically ready to go and excited
Mhm.
to do that. So,
I think so. Yeah,
it kind of,
right, and so kind of just, you know, wrapping up the idea of, like, really it's, hey, some of this is gonna take time, right? So this is kind of one of those mental adjustments for you of, if we emphasize the consistency, right, we'll be able to get to the intensity. The
yes.
goals will come with consistency, and it's, putting in time over an extended period, right? Putting in that consistent training that, right, that's what's gonna give you those results. Right.
Absolutely.
And so, for those of you wherever you are on the spectrum, right, if you're looking to up that, adjusting mentally, giving yourself some grace, right, giving yourself some time, some opportunity. We're in the summer right now. The summer is great for that. You have a lot of time, right? Focus on that consistency. Not every workout has to be that max effort workout. And your last response, you mentioned getting to the start line and you don't want to be exhausted, right? You don't want to
Yes.
be tired, right? Whether it's from workouts and things like that. What are kind of the really important, really crucial recovery things that when you are doing that training are going to, allow you to, hey, all right, now I get to the line, I'm ready to go. My body is recovered, it's refreshed. I'm ready to run what I've been training for.
Well, probably a couple things, but one is just making sure you don't overdo training so that you do feel fresh on that day. But the other one, I mean, is the recovery process. So, and that's a, few different things that go into that, but sleep is very important. And I, and
Yeah.
I tell athletes, like, make sure your diet's good, your sleep's good, your stress is, as low as, as you can, make it. There's people who have different schedules, different work things, and stress is going to be, life happens. There's stress there. But definitely one thing that, people can control is sleep. And I think, over the years, that's one thing that's been tough for me, is to
Yeah.
just get that adequate amount of sleep. And part of
Hmm.
it is, I don't know, at night, my mind is just going,
Yeah.
sometimes. But the other part is, my schedule, and not being good with, proactive about making sure I'm in bed by a certain time, because I do need to wake up early to either train, coach, whatever it might be. We're in Arizona. It's hot. You got to get your
Yeah.
runs in early.
Yeah.
So it's being disciplined and getting to bed early so you can
Hmm.
wake up early, if that's what, the schedule you want to have or need to have. And very important to do that. So staying disciplined, because
Yeah.
sleep
Well,
is where your body will recover
that's where it
during sleep.
recovers. Yeah, I mean, so, we hear in professional athletes, and I'm gonna loop back in, but we hear the HGH conversation all the time. It's like, hey, they're taking some sort of supplements or HGH hormones, right? That's a naturally occurring thing in our bodies,
Right.
right? Those athletes are just taking extra, which is what is not permitted under the sport. But 95% of the HGH that our body produces and releases happens during sleep.
Sleep. That's
95%.
that time.
Right? So that primary factor that, we go run our workouts, we get those miles in, we get that intense session in, we're breaking down our muscles. 95% of the driving force behind recovery is being released and produced during our sleep.
Yeah, that's huge.
That is a
I didn't know the
staggering
percentage,
percentage.
but yeah, it's something that's been like, you hear it all the time. It's undebatable. You need sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and I think the other part of sleep is, when you're not well rested, it becomes a struggle mentally.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, think about some of those, like, early morning sessions where, hey, maybe I only got, for whatever reason, 5 hours of sleep, and I wake up and I'm groggy, I'm not as focused and I get into that hard session and I'm on rep 3 of 5, like, where is your mental fortitude
Yeah.
in those moments?
No, definitely it's weaker. I know because
Yeah.
you're just yeah, you're on the brink of exhaustion. You're just okay. Uh, but yeah, sleep is where the blood like it's circulating really well and it's
Mhm.
moving oxygen and blood flow throughout your body at a very very effective,
Yeah.
pace and it's allowing those muscles to rebuild, recover,
Right.
rejuvenate for the next day.
Yeah.
Whatever that might hold. It might be your day of work, it might be a hard workout, whatever, but that's the rebuilding process.
Yeah.
And I see that so much in just training that people are sacrificing that rebuilding process.
Mhm.
And as a coach with a training schedule, that's why you don't put 2 hard days in a row. But also, that's why you need sleep because that is part
Yeah.
of that rebuilding process.
Yeah.
And it is essential to get faster.
Right.
If you tear down your muscles and you're doing these micro tears, this trauma to your body, and you sacrifice the rebuilding process,
Hmm.
yes, you potentially will get hurt, but also you're not rebuilding them up strong for the next session. You're
Yeah.
sacrificing that natural process that your body does to
Yeah. So
rebuild tissues.
so you're talking about the recovery process during sleep, and, I really want this to be, like, a honest conversation, like, I wanna hear what your first responses are, and so you might say something different than what I have in mind,
Mhm.
which is okay, and we can talk about it. In my brain, I've kind of identified, like, the most important muscle for you while you're running. What would you say the most important muscle is?
Most important muscle when you're running. Well, I have one muscle that comes to mind. However, I'm trying to think
No,
about
say it. What's the one that
well,
comes to mind for
I'm
you?
just thinking like your big muscle. Glute is a muscle that people do not use enough of. So doing
Okay.
exercises to activate that muscle, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to because I'm trying to envision like what muscle are you thinking, or maybe like the brain or whatever. But keep
The heart.
heart, yeah, yeah,
Right? I mean, like,
yes,
you're talking about the blood flow, like, the blood's gotta get to all
yeah,
the muscles to help the recovery process, we gotta move all those things throughout, and then, when we're actually running, it's our during the actual exercise, our heart rate's increased, right? It's elevated, it's working really hard. The heart never stops,
yeah,
right? Hopefully. And so, the heart needs an opportunity to recover too. And if you look at your heart rate data and information, sleep is when your heart rate is the
love
lowest,
it.
right? Like, and so, that all important muscle that is kind of controlling and driving all the operations that even allow the other muscles to perform, that's its opportunity to rest and recover as well. That's when your blood pressure is the lowest. And you were kind of
Absolutely,
talking about the blood flow that happens during sleep. All of this needs to happen while we're asleep. And if we're not sleeping, we're not giving the body a chance to do that,
yeah, no,
right?
that's good. Yeah,
And the other thing that happens during our sleep is that's when we convert everything into energy, right?
yes,
So all that great food that we're eating, we go for our long run, and I think everyone here, whether your longest session is, hey, I ran 30 minutes for the first time, or I ran an hour, or I'm putting in these like really long, like 20-mile sessions, or whatever it is. Maybe some of our ultra listeners are doing things that just don't make sense to me, but they're out there, right?
yeah,
We eat this food to refuel. Most of that process happens while we're asleep,
yeah,
right? And so, if we're not converting that fuel into energy,
mhm,
right? Where does our body go for energy? It goes to our muscles,
yes.
right? So we've
It
already
starts to
broken down our muscles. Why would we add in something else that's going to
something
break
else
it
is
down even
nah.
more?
Yeah, your body uses stored glycogen for what the first hour
Yeah.
in exercise. So during the night, that's what your body's doing. It's storing glycogen. So you
Hmm.
can have, like you said, you're using that for energy rather than breaking down
Yeah.
muscles. Yeah.
Right. And so, making sure that we're priming our body to be ready for the efforts to be consistent in our training, right? That's something we can control. That's something that, we can exert influence over. And, it's a really straightforward thing to take advantage of. We've talked about the sleep and the recovery, right? A lot of this kind of feels like long term, hey, be patient
Yeah.
kind of things to implement, which, let's face it, I don't know about you, that can be hard for me sometimes,
Yeah. No.
right? Like,
Amen.
for example, we're in a fantasy football league doing a draft right now, and it is dragging along, and I'm really struggling with the patience. So, if you wanted to give the listeners, whether it's your beginner runner or maybe remind some of your more accomplished, more experienced runners, what is like the easiest thing, the easiest running specific thing that you can add into your training or add back into your training that's going to help you get faster?
Hmm. Yeah, I would definitely short, very short speed work, so strides and some short hill sprints would
Okay.
be my go-to.
Yeah. So I
Um,
think everyone has an idea of what a hill sprint is because everyone at some point either did a hill sprint or has encountered someone that has complained about hill sprints.
yeah.
You said a stride. What is a stride?
So stride is basically running at a near maximal effort, but not max. So it could be anywhere from 75. I like 75 to 100 meters or 75 to 120. And basically just gradually building up to maybe 9 out of 10 effort, and then coming back down, decelerating a little bit. So it's just this fast effort,
Yeah.
but building into it and coming down from it that really activate the fast muscle,
Hmm.
fibers in your body,
Yep.
and really can work on nice smooth form too.
Yeah.
People are moving faster, their form is more naturally where it should be. So it's good muscle memory there. But it's just, I mean, we're talking 15 seconds total,
Yeah.
is what I typically will give athletes to do. That's not a lot of time, and your body's not going to be exhausted from it
Yeah.
by doing maybe 4, 6, 8 of those.
Hmm.
So it's just a short speed exertion where your body, can
Yeah.
kind of learn and adapt and just experience that speed without a lot of repercussions at all.
Yeah. So I mean, strides, it's kind of one of these things comes a lot from coaches. Coaches say it a lot. Some different takes on it. I collected a couple. Tell me which ones you kind of agree with, which ones kind of
Okay.
fit, your vision. So you said about the 15-second effort.
Yeah.
So, one of the famous, kind of training methods and training philosophies is from Jack Daniels, right? So they define it as 15 to 20 seconds at what you can race for about 5 minutes. Does that feel?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, that would be good. I would think it could even be, 3 to 4 minutes, but yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. And then some people extend it to as long as 30 seconds,
Okay.
right? But that same idea, roughly that 8.5 to 9.5 out of effort, right? Again, that idea of what could you race for 5 minutes or maybe approximately like mile pace effort.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
Yeah.
usually tell people in between, 800 to a mile effort. But yeah, mile effort, I think is a good, nice place
Yeah.
to hang out at
Yeah.
there.
And so this is actually a topic you and I have talked about a bunch. One of the few running topics that we maybe don't quite
Agree.
perfectly mesh on. And I actually think we're both right and we're both wrong. Right. So I think in a lot of our early discussions, and I think the distance you gave earlier is actually kind of an updated opinion from the first time we taled about it.
That
And
I
so
just gave?
so I think
Oh,
when
yes,
I
yes,
think
yes,
when we
yes.
first started, you were a fan of around 50 to 75 meters.
I would say 75. 50 is probably a little short,
Okay.
but I would say, yeah, I
Yeah.
would more on probably the shorter end.
Yeah. And then I was very insistent. It's like 100 meters or nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
100 meters or nothing. And, I'll start with, you know, that for me came from I was working with a lot of athletes where that 100 meters tended to slot right into that 15 to 20-second mark,
Right, right.
right? Your 75-meter mark, right? You work with a wide range of athletes. That's actually probably pretty reflective of, where that would be.
Yeah, because 15 seconds for 100 meters is a 4-minute
Yeah.
mile. So, yeah,
Right. And so, like, where I was maybe missing the boat was, hey, it has to be this rigid distance,
you're right.
right? But really, it's more of kind of that time effort
Yeah,
versus a specific distance,
yeah.
right? And so, the other part of this is, like we talk about what strides are doing, how they help us, but we're talking about adding in, fast running, right?
Right,
So how do we do that in a way where it doesn't compromise our consistency? It doesn't take away from the goal of what a session was,
right.
right? How do we implement these into our running?
So, yeah, I mean, and you and I even disagreed a little bit, and I wouldn't say I disagreed with you. I think the suggestion, when we met last year for the first time, you were like, I would do more strides, would be mainly the bigger change. And I
Yeah.
think I had them probably twice a week, and you're like, I would do them 3 or 4 times a week. But in general, you just spread them out it depends what part of the season you're in or how far
Mhm.
from race and are you at the base fielding. So the more farther away you are from a race, I would do that more because it's giving you that little bit of speed, keeping you fresh and activating those fast twitch fibers and just kind of, you know, giving you a little bit of speed,
Yeah.
but not a lot at all. We're talking about, I mean, a minute and a half if you're doing 6 by 15 seconds. So it's
Right.
just a little bit. So you just spread them out
Mhm.
during your base training. Let's say you're running 5 or 6 days a week, mostly easy running, if not
Yeah.
all easy running right now. You could do that 3 times a week.
Yeah. So you said spreading them out during your effort.
Hmm.
Are you saying
Day,
sprinkle them
day,
into the middle of your run or
Oh, I mean, you could do them honestly whenever, but I usually do it towards the end after the body's warmed up. You already put in some easy running, and then at the end, just finish it off with some strides.
okay. So let's say you have one of your beginner
Mm,
athletes, right? And you're going to give them strides
mhm.
as part of their workout. Let's say they have a 30-minute run,
Okay.
right? How are they going to add strides into their workout?
So I've done it both ways where at the end or within the last mile, they'll do 6 by 15 second strides within that last mile of the run, and they'll do a minute in between or 45 seconds in between.
Okay.
Other times, like depending on, their experience, how much they've been running, they'll finish the run and they'll literally do like 15-second stride, stop, and then they'll do another 15-second stride,
Mhm.
stop, go back and forth.
Yeah.
But
And so I want to loop back.
you might have different opinion, but my thing doesn't matter too much,
Yeah.
like what it looks like at the end. Like ideally I just like to jog in between things, but
Yeah. Well, so I want to loop back. You mentioned kind of like 45 seconds in
in
between.
between, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with kind of a lot of the definitions that I found and what I believe about strides myself. I kind of like to do them on like if I'm going to really emphasize the 15 to 20 seconds to make it easy on an athlete
On the minute.
on the
Yeah,
minute,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. See,
right? So like, hey, 15 seconds, I get 3 times the recovery.
right.
If it's 20 seconds, I get 2 times the recovery,
Mhm.
right? It's pretty good. It's pretty convenient when someone is running strides. So if we're introducing this to someone that is less familiar, like how should they feel in between the strides? Like how should their body response be? What are some of the things that they could think about to maybe help them make sure that they're doing them at the right pace and the right effort?
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good point because sometimes I have athletes that they like to overdo strides, and that's not uncommon. That's not
Yeah.
uncommon. It's really uncommon. So the idea, and that's a good point, that when you're done with the stride, you want to feel like you've worked a little bit and your heart rate comes up, but it wants to feel like a good, honest effort. However, after the 45 seconds, you got to feel good enough that you can do exactly what you just did without being like, I'm pooped from
Yeah.
that first stride. So you got to be able to recover fully pretty much
Hmm.
and be able to do it again at a nice, comfortable, smooth, controlled effort.
Yeah.
You don't want to be pushing the strides as if it's right at the end of a race. Like,
Yeah.
okay, do this stride just like as you're going to finish a race. No, that's not what we're going for. So you want to feel good, relaxed, and ready to do another one. And you can do that in a nice rhythm,
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah. So you mentioned smooth. Right. I think that's a great word for strides is they should be smooth. You shouldn't feel like you're straining. It shouldn't feel awkward. You
Mhm.
shouldn't feel like you're kind of teetering on the edge. I recently I was working with a new runner who they were training for a 10K. Before this, they had run just under 27 minutes for a 5K.
Okay.
And then for 10K, they ran 50 minutes and 9 seconds,
Gotcha.
right? So huge improvement, even just like per 5K
It's
basis,
true.
and then
Double the
doubled it.
5K. Yeah.
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 And, most of the like, we'll call it speed that we added in was, hey, we're doing strides at the end of the
The
run.
strides. Yeah.
And, the way that I described it to them, and they actually really liked it, and they've shared it with some of their friends that are also kind of introductory runners, is like feel fast and feel fun.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, a lot of times we can get focused on, we said earlier, mile effort or what you could race for 5 minutes. I think it's also important, like, hey, maybe you just like need to feel some enjoyment
Wait.
with running.
Yeah.
Like, you need to say, oh, this is kind of fun. I actually really like this.
Yeah.
And so, hey, yeah, I just finished my 30-minute run. Or for some of our more experienced athletes, I just finished my 60-minute run or my 90-minute run and I have a couple strides at the end. Like, all right, like this is fun.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy this.
Yeah.
And I always like to call strides a cheap, dirty speed.
Cheap, dirty speed.
Cheap, dirty speed.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
Like it doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
It doesn't add anything to my recovery time.
Right.
but I maintain that connection with my speed, right? It improves our communication pathways between our central nervous system and
Mhm.
our muscle fibers,
Yep.
right? Some argue it actually helps speed up your recovery, right? It helps avoid that heavy and flat feeling that can come from just a lot of slow miles, right? If I'm just running the same pace, for hours on end,
Absolutely.
right? Avoid that feeling,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't cost you anything, easy to add in, and it makes you better,
Yeah. I
right?
like the old term. I mean, a common word that, reading some like old books, they always say peppy, makes you
Yeah.
feel peppy. And honestly, a lot of time I give my athletes strides before races a lot because I feel personally, I think the research is there, but also personally, if I do strides before a race, like the day before even, I'll do it before the race day as well. I feel more peppy, energized, fresh, ready to go, more,
Mm,
zippy. And I think that has a lot to do with because you're activating,
yeah.
you know, your muscles, you're firing them
Mhm.
and they're not as flat the next day. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So, okay, so we had strides in the middle slash towards the end of the run.
Hmm.
We had strides tacked on after you finished your
Hmm.
run. And then you also talked about strides before a race or a workout,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so kind of I think the strides before a race or a workout are a little bit different, right? That's part of just like, hey, let's just get the body warmed up. Let's get the
Yes.
heart rate ready to go. But those other two, it's not overly important where you do them,
Right.
right? But it has the same benefits,
Hmm.
right? And the same kind of cues of, hey, what should I be feeling, right? If you, let's say you're doing a 30-minute run, you run for 12 minutes, you do your 6 to 8 strides, and then you kind of just jog it out until 30, right?
Right.
You shouldn't feel tired from your strides. It shouldn't make the rest of the run miserable.
Yeah, you should, like you said, you should be excited. You should be like, yeah, like that felt good. And it's always good to finish fast. Like as a distance runner, it's good to have
Yeah.
even splits or negative splits. Add strides at the end. I think mentally just help you be like, yeah, I got energy at the end.
Yeah.
So it's also a mental thing of like, finishing fast. But once again, not like a fast last mile, really hard, everything you got. No, no, no.
Hmm.
We're not talking now. We're just get some nice fast speed,
Yeah.
like you said, free speed where, you're not going to build up lactic acid. You're not going to be sore the next day.
Right.
If anything, most of the time you feel better.
Yeah. So I'm going to
Yeah.
put you on the spot here. All
Great.
right. So you talked about a lot of your running, your coaching, right? When was the last time that you went out and you did a run just for yourself, right?
Mhm.
So you had just do you run for time or distance when you go out and run for
Usually
yourself?
myself distance,
Okay.
but when I'm coaching high school, it's a
Okay.
lot of it's time.
So let's say you're going out for a 6 mile run, kind
Uh-huh.
of a recovery day. I
Yep.
know that that would be a recovery day for you. When was the last time on a run on your own you added in 6 to 8 strides at the end of it?
I mean, honestly, so not that long ago, I would
Okay.
say probably last week, maybe the week before. I mean, I can't remember, but I do that. It's more like
Yeah.
here's the problem though. I
Yeah.
usually don't run on my own
Okay.
that often, which isn't
Yeah.
great either. But yeah, I would say what is today? Wednesday. I would say
Yeah.
last week, I think.
Okay.
But it needs to happen more. I would say I probably, you know, every other week on average.
Okay.
But mostly if I'm honest, I just don't run a lot on my own. I'm usually meeting with somebody or the
Mhm.
team,
Right.
high school team we're coaching or different things like that. So makes it
Okay.
a little harder, but
So, for your more experienced athletes that you coach,
mhm.
are strides part of their program?
Oh yeah,
That's a specific
that is
specification in
the
their.
training schedules I give them. Yes.
Okay.
Strides, and then I'll usually rotate through some kind of hill sprint type of thing. Like I said, it depends where they're at in the process. If they're in the
Yeah.
base building phase, strides a couple days a week. If not, hill sprints, in there as well.
Okay.
Uh,
So, maybe a more experienced runner reaches out to you for the first time to start up some coaching.
mhm.
What is the reaction from them when you start adding in strides? Are they usually surprised by that? Or they're like, yeah, this is something that I normally do?
I would say, yeah, some are surprised, and some have asked me like, "What is a stride? What do you mean by that?"
Yeah.
And in there, typically I'll say 6 by 15 seconds. And for the first time, if I write a schedule, I'll say with 45 minutes,
Yeah.
45 seconds in between. But they'll ask, "What effort? What pace?
Yeah.
What pace for 15?" Like that's I just say, close to 9 out of 10, build to 9 out of 10 effort.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say I definitely do get some athletes that are not exactly sure what that is
Yeah.
or how to run them. But I would say a fair amount still do. So I don't know. I mean, maybe 50-50. But it is
Okay.
not uncommon for somebody to be like, I don't think I've ever done a stride. What does it
Yeah.
look like? So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely happens somewhat frequently.
Yeah. I mean, that it's one of those things, like, it just seems so small and insignificant, right? And, I called it cheap, dirty speed earlier, right? Where it doesn't cost you anything, right? It's this really easy thing to add on. And so the thinking can kind of go the other way of like, oh my gosh, it's like such a small thing. Like, what's really the harm in leaving it out? But, it's one of those small things that just over time, if you're consistent with it, it just stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks.
That's just it. That's like anything with the running program. The consistency will pay off,
Yeah.
in the future. And that's just one of the things that it will pay off in the
Hmm.
future. And I just think there's a lot of benefit to strides, whether it's, like I said before, with even form. I think when people are doing strides, their form is better than
Hmm.
when they're running easy.
Yep.
So just putting that in there can help that muscle memory and help them think about, oh, my cadence should be higher. My knees and my heels should come up higher.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is the feel for, what the form should look like more. Because all of us, to some extent, when we're running easy sometimes, and if we're tired, our form can get a little lax.
Yeah.
So it's nice to kind of put that in there as a reminder and let the body feel that this is where I need to be at, closer. So
Yeah.
yeah, strides are I think an essential part of,
Hmm.
and like I said, the amount of them and how long can vary on the experience of the runner and where they're at, in their training session. If they're in a really heavy block, if they're racing in a couple months and they're at
Yeah.
really kind of intense workouts, you might have a little bit less because you have some more speedy sessions
Right.
within there. So you might only have, one day of strides, but then you got 200s and another
Hmm.
day, whatever that might look like. So it can vary a little bit, but in general, should be in there
Yeah.
a good amount of times.
So for people at home, whether they're a beginning runner that is like, oh, okay, this sounds like a fun thing to add, right? Something that might help me get better. It might even bring me a little more enjoyment.
Mhm.
All the way to, hey, I'm getting ready for a marathon. I'm about to run 26 miles, and you're telling me that I need to be doing some close to sprints, right? Not full sprints, but close to it, right? Something, a pace you could run for 5 minutes,
Right.
right? If they're going to add this in at home, we've talked about the structure. So, like 15 to 20 seconds,
Mm.
and then maybe, you know, round it out to the minute, right? To keep it easy on your watch, or, 30 to 45 seconds, you should feel recovered. What's like the max or like the minimum and then the maximum number of strides that you would suggest for you do enough of them to have some benefit, but you don't overdo it?
Depends on the athlete, but I mean, the minimum I would say 4, the
Hmm.
max you could do 10, but I really like 6 or 8, in a typical, and it depends. And once again, it might be 2 times a week, 3 times a week, you know, that can vary as well. But yeah, I like 6 to 8. I mean, because if you get into like over 10, then
You're almost approaching a workout
right,
at
right.
that point.
So, and especially if you're doing longer strides.
Yeah.
I mean, and depending on your speed, that can almost be like 12 by 150
Right.
meters. Like that's, so that's a little bit much, but it depends on the athlete too. But I've always 6 to 8 is a very good, place to kind of be on those.
Yeah. That's kind of what I think too. I think 4 is kind of the minimum. I would think if you do 1 or 2 or even 3, you didn't really kind of start that recovery process. You didn't really kind of firm in on that central nervous system to muscle fiber connection. And so, 4 I think is the minimum. Usually I think I would top out at 8. But then if I'm in just like a purely base building phase, right? So I'm not having a track workout or a tempo workout or an interval session during the week. Sometimes I might push like 10 or 12. And in fact, if I've had some new runners reach out to me recently for training plans. Sometimes I make sure that they get like a a day with 12 strides
Mhm.
before we go do a
A
workout.
workout. So that'll
Yeah.
be their workout, 12 rounds.
Yeah, it's essentially like as the hybrid in
Mhm.
between where it's like, "Hey, this is something that I've been doing. I like this. This feels good." Right? And now, hey, we're kind of approaching workout territory, and it's like kind of making that smooth introduction into, all right, this is what hard high level training looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, so just finished up with strides, talked about strides, the benefits, how to add them in, what they look like in your run. You mentioned something interesting, right? Or you kind of alluded to something with everything kind of comes back to this consistency idea.
Mm.
And so, people ask me all the time because I think a lot of people look at how much running people like the two of us do and they're like, you're crazy. And they're like, how did you get to the point where you are? That seems so daunting. And I like to tell people getting better at running is really simple. I'm not going to tell them that it's easy because it's not, right? And all of you out there that are listening, you know the struggles that come with running. It's not easy, but it is simple.
So
And even when you talked about strides, and we could say the same thing about sleep, it all comes back to that word of consistency, right? And so, like for you, what do you feel like that role of consistency has kind of played in your running journey?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's huge because I mean, I started running at 17. I said, "Ah, sounds fun." And honestly, so since then, it's just been consistency. It's been year after year after year after year. And that has just helped my base,
Hmm.
you know, incredibly.
Yeah.
So and and let's make sure that, consistency is is what we want over time for, absolutely for sure. But also in this consistency process, you have to make sure that, maybe it's you take a day off a week, or like
Yeah.
you said, one day off every 14.
Mm.
Honestly, maybe a week or two every year, you're taking a time where you make sure your body fully recovers. So
Yeah.
even though we're consistently over time putting in the miles, putting in the work,
Hmm.
there's still these periods of less intensity and completely not
Yeah.
running, or cross training, or
Yeah.
something where we let our body get back into this nice healthy homeostasis and just a nice break where we can recover
Hmm.
and let your body, relax and recover a little bit. But yeah, over the years, I mean, you know, it's been consistent, and it's not easy. Well, I guess you just said that, but it is a simple
Right.
process. And as long as, the athlete is willing to stay disciplined
Hmm.
and be consistent. And I tell athletes this now, like, the gains might not come exactly when you want them, but if you are consistent and if you are training smart and effectively and taking some of these principles in mind, you will get faster. And you might have periods of plateau. You might have periods of where you're just really revving, you're really going, you're
Yeah.
making a lot of personal gains. But there's always this ebb and flow no matter what. And sometimes we don't know exactly.
Hmm.
But if you stay consistent that whole process, eventually you will be faster. What
Well, so it's funny you talk about all these things, right? So the consistency over time, that consistency in the recovery, consistency in running and getting your miles in, that consistency in strides. I was able to reach out to a couple college athletes.
Okay.
And so right now, college athletes, they're in their summer training phase. And, they were able to send me some of their training plans. Now I'm not gonna say names or schools because I don't want coaches to get
Mhm.
upset, right? And I want, their things. But commonalities between all the different plans that I was able to look at is slowly building that consistency,
Mhm.
right? Being consistent with sleep and recovery. There were specific instructions
About
in
that.
several of them about you need to make sure that you're getting your recovery in. You need to make sure that you're cross training on certain days to let your body recover. You need to make sure that you're getting enough sleep to let your muscles repair. And then also specifically mandating strides
Mhm.
in their summer training.
Mhm.
And, you know, there aren't many levels of running that are higher than collegiate running.
Yeah.
And so, even these things that we're talking about for the beginner runner, it's staying there for those elite athletes.
Yeah. Same principles. Yeah.
It's the same principles everywhere, right? And so again, it's not easy, but it's really simple,
Yeah.
right? And so I want to thank Nate for coming on today, right? Brought a lot of knowledge, expertise, a lot of good information, ways to implement that information, and something that we're going to add in future episodes. We're going to call it Coach's Corner. So if you are working on training for a race and you have a race plan and you kind of want to get some thoughts from myself and the guests that I have for that particular episode on your training plan, send in that training plan, attach it in the comments. You'll also see an email in the comments where you could email that to. And we will spend 5 to 7 minutes looking at a training plan, identifying the good things, maybe some areas that we have questions or concerns.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we will also take some time trying to just answer questions in general from the comments if you have questions about anything. But until then, happy running, stay consistent, and be patient.